Maya's hands shook as she stood in the middle of the living room, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Her father, David, glared at her with eyes full of anger, his face red, veins standing out on his neck. The argument had started over something small, a question about money, but it had escalated into something much bigger, something she had felt coming for years. "You're not my daughter. Don't ever come back to this house," he spat, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. Maya's chest tightened. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The words didn't just sting. They shattered something deep inside her. She tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but no sound came out. Her brother, Eric, leaned casually against the wall, a smirk playing on his lips, like he had been waiting for this moment. Her mother, Evelyn, stood frozen, her face pale, lips pressed together. She didn't move, didn't speak. The silence made the blow hit even harder. Every ounce of warmth Maya had felt from her family felt like it had been ripped away in that instant. Maya felt the tears welling up, but she fought them back. She had learned long ago that showing weakness around her father only gave him power. Still, the weight of his words pressed down on her chest, making it hard to think, hard to stand. She could feel the room closing in around her, every glance from her father, every silent stare from her mother, burning into her. She took a shaky step toward the door, then another. Her hands trembled so badly, she thought she might drop her bag. The cold from the night outside seeped under the door even before she opened it, chilling her from the inside out. She didn't look back, couldn't. The words echoed in her head, each repetition like a punch. "You're not my daughter. Don't ever come back." As she stepped into the dark street, the chill of the night matched the emptiness in her chest. The wind whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't care. Her legs carried her forward almost automatically, away from the house, away from the people who were supposed to love her. She stopped for a moment, looking up at the dim streetlights, feeling the sting of tears she refused to let fall. Her voice was barely a whisper, carried by the cold wind. "Then I'm done being your daughter," she said, the words tasting bitter but freeing all at once. And with that, she walked on into the night, leaving behind the house, the hurt, and the family she had always longed to belong to. Maya had always felt like she was living in the shadow of someone else. Growing up, her brother Eric seemed to shine effortlessly in everything he did, and their father, David, never missed a chance to point it out. If Eric got an A on a test, it was celebrated. If Maya got the same grade, it was barely noticed. If she made a small mistake, it became a lesson in her father's eyes, a proof that she wasn't good enough. Maya learned early that nothing she did could truly earn his approval. Even as a little girl, she remembered standing in the kitchen, trying to explain a school project she had worked hard on, only for her father to brush her aside. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" he had said, his voice flat, almost annoyed. Meanwhile, Eric got praise for a project he barely finished. Maya's heart sank every time. She wanted love and recognition, but all she got was criticism and comparison. Her mother, Evelyn, tried to comfort her sometimes, but she too had her limits. "You're too emotional," she would say gently, trying to calm Maya when she cried. But those words only made Maya feel more fragile, like her feelings were a flaw. It was hard to explain that her emotions weren't weakness. They were what made her care, what made her human. But to her parents, empathy was just another thing to correct, another reason to say she didn't measure up. By the time Maya grew older, she had learned to rely on herself. She moved into a small apartment, modest but her own, with peeling paint on the walls and a view of the city she loved walking through. She worked in marketing at a company that didn't pay much, but it was hers, and she was proud of what she could do on her own. For the first time, she was building a life that wasn't measured against her brother's accomplishments or her father's standards. Even now at 29, she remembered the sting of those childhood days. She remembered her father's strict rules, his cold expectations, and the way he always demanded obedience instead of love. She remembered the nights she lay awake in her room, wishing he would notice her for who she really was, not for how well she could follow orders or meet his impossible standards. And she remembered the small victories that meant nothing to anyone else but kept her moving forward, finishing a book on her own, helping a friend through a hard time, learning a new skill at work. Her friends at work saw her kindness, her empathy, the quiet determination she carried in her eyes. They didn't see the hurt that lingered in her chest, The weight of years spent proving herself to a father who never truly celebrated her. She wanted to believe she had escaped it, that she had found independence and freedom, but every so often, the old wounds opened. A passing comment, a subtle insult, or even the memory of her father's cold stare could make her feel invisible all over again. Maya often wondered why it hurt so much, why her father's absence of love left such deep marks. She knew she was capable, intelligent, and kind, yet a part of her still yearned for that simple approval she never got. She remembered the small moments when she had tried to reach out, when she had hoped he would finally see her for herself, and not in comparison to Eric. And each time, the rejection made her stronger, even if it didn't feel that way. Despite everything, she had a heart that cared fiercely. She helped colleagues without expecting anything in return, offered a listening ear to friends in need, and never turned away from someone who needed her guidance. Her empathy, the very thing her mother had once called too much, had become her strength. It reminded her that love could exist outside the walls of her childhood home, that she could be valued and appreciated by people who chose to see her. Living alone, supporting herself, and building her career, Maya had begun to see her life differently. She no longer needed constant validation from the people who had hurt her most. Yet, even in this newfound independence, there remained a quiet ache, a part of her that wished her family could be different, that they could recognize the woman she had become. But deep down, she knew that this life, though imperfect and challenging, was the one she had chosen for herself. It was the life she could finally call her own, shaped not by others' judgments but by her own resilience and courage. Maya was more than the girl who had grown up in her father's shadow. She was someone who had learned to survive, to care, and to keep moving forward even when the people who were supposed to love her most had failed. And though the pain of rejection still lingered, it no longer defined her. She was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the strength she had forged from years of being unseen. David might not be her biological father. The words hit Maya like a punch she hadn't seen coming. She had been sitting at her small kitchen table, staring at her laptop, when her phone rang. It was her aunt, someone she had always trusted, someone who had seemed harmless enough. Maya, I don't know how to say this, but I think your dad, he might not be your real father, her aunt blurted out, her voice shaky. Maya froze, the phone slipping slightly in her hand. What are you saying? She whispered, hardly believing the words. Her aunt hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I thought you should know. Your mother. It was a long time ago, before you were born. The words of her father came rushing back, louder and sharper than ever. You're not my daughter. Now they felt heavier, more literal. The sting of rejection was no longer just emotional. It carried a confusing, dizzying weight she couldn't shake. Her mind spun as she replayed every memory, every argument, every cold glance. The sense of betrayal cut deep. She couldn't focus, couldn't think clearly. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them. She called her mother, Evelyn, her hands trembling. Mom, is it true? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. There was silence on the other end, then a shaky breath. Maya, I didn't want you to find out this way, her mother admitted, her voice breaking. Years ago, before you were born, I made a mistake. I had a brief affair. Your father. He's not your biological father. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Her chest tightened, her stomach churned. She wasn't angry at her mother for the truth itself. She was angry at the years of lies, the years of pretending, the years of living in a story that wasn't fully hers. Everyone had known, her mother, her father, even her brother, and yet she had been left to suffer the consequences of their silence. I can't believe this, Maya whispered, tears threatening to fall. You let me live my whole life in a lie? Her mother sobbed, unable to speak further, guilt weighing on every word. But Maya couldn't wait for apologies. The sense of betrayal, confusion, and pain was too much. She realized in that moment that the people who were supposed to protect her had failed her instead. Maya's hands shook as she ended the call. She felt an anger rising inside her, burning hotter than she had ever felt. Every memory of hurt, of rejection, of being treated as invisible or not enough, surged through her. It wasn't just about who her father was. It was about the truth being hidden from her, the years of pretending she belonged in a family that had built her life on a lie. She made a decision then and there. "I'm cutting everyone off," she whispered to herself, her voice steady with determination. She didn't know how or when, but she knew she needed space, distance, and time to process the betrayal. She couldn't trust them. Not yet, maybe not ever. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, staring out the window at the city lights. Her mind raced, emotions swirling like a storm. Anger, pain, sadness, confusion, all tangled together, heavy and suffocating. And yet, beneath it all, there was a spark of clarity. She didn't need their approval anymore. She didn't need their validation. She would find her own path, define her own life, and protect her own heart. For the first time, Maya felt the weight of independence, the bitter, painful freedom of choosing herself over the family who had betrayed her. The line had been crossed. She had reached the point of no return. Everything she thought she knew about her life had shifted, and there was no going back. Maya wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and whispered to the empty room, "I'm done being a part of their world. From now on, it's just me." Maya blocked her parents' numbers and didn't look back. She couldn't bring herself to hear their voices, couldn't face the words, the lies, the years of betrayal. At first, it felt like a small relief, a way to protect herself from more pain. But as the hours turned into days, the silence grew heavier. The house she rented felt emptier, the city around her buzzing with life while she felt frozen in place. She started therapy, something she had avoided for years, thinking she could handle everything on her own. Sitting in that quiet office, talking to someone who didn't judge her, didn't minimize her feelings, felt strange at first. But slowly it became a lifeline. She spoke about the anger she couldn't show at her father, the sadness she had buried, the loneliness that gnawed at her. She learned to recognize that her worth wasn't tied to her family's approval, and that healing could begin even when trust had been broken. Meanwhile, her mother, Evelyn, was falling apart in ways Maya couldn't see. Guilt ate at her constantly. She wrote letter after letter, pouring out apologies, regrets, and pleas for forgiveness, but she never sent them. Or when she did, Maya didn't read them. She wasn't ready to hear anything from the people who had hurt her most. Evelyn's pain was quiet, hidden behind the routine of life, but it was there, sharp and persistent. David, too, began to crumble. His pride had always been his armor, the thing that kept him from admitting fault or reaching out. But the guilt now clawed at him. Every quiet moment, every night he spent alone in the house, he thought of Maya, her face, her hurt, her anger. He wanted to call, to beg forgiveness, but the fear of rejection kept him silent. Still, the weight of not doing anything pressed on him relentlessly, and he found himself restless, unable to concentrate on work or sleep. Eric, on the other hand, tried to control the narrative. He told their father that Maya was just playing victim, that she was exaggerating the betrayal and using it to manipulate everyone. He wanted David to stay angry, to keep Maya at a distance, so Eric could maintain the family status quo and avoid confronting his own guilt. Maya's absence from family gatherings, her quiet withdrawal, and the rumors swirling around made the house tense in ways it hadn't been before. At work, Maya excelled. She threw herself into projects, impressing her colleagues and boss with her dedication and sharp mind. The praise was different from what she had ever gotten from her family. It was real, earned, and appreciated. But no amount of professional success could fill the emptiness that followed her home each evening. She came back to her small apartment, the silence pressing on her, and felt the absence of her family more keenly than ever. She realized that her independence came with a cost, the ache of isolation. In the midst of this loneliness, she found support in Mrs. Sanders, a kind woman who lived nearby and had watched Maya grow up from a distance. Mrs. Sanders became a quiet mother figure, someone who offered guidance without judgment, someone who reminded Maya that not all adults could hurt you, that love could exist outside blood and tradition. They shared long conversations over tea, sometimes silent, sometimes full of stories of resilience, and Maya began to feel the comfort of being understood. Yet at night, when the city outside her window slowed down, Maya replayed her last moments with her father. She didn't know if she hated him or missed him. The memory of his words, "You're not my daughter," was still raw, but so was the memory of the time she had hoped for his approval, the time she had tried and failed to gain his love. The contradiction tore at her, and she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. Her mind often wandered back to Eric too. And the way he had seemed so calm, so smug, during the moments she felt most vulnerable. She hated that he could be so cold. Yet part of her pitied him too. He had grown up in the same house, trapped in the same expectations, but somehow had learned to survive by following their father's rules instead of questioning them. Every day felt like a test of endurance. The tension rose, subtle but persistent, like a storm building in the distance. David's pride, Evelyn's guilt, Eric's manipulations, and Maya's own anger and sorrow all collided in a web of unspoken emotions. Everyone was hiding pain under a mask, refusing to show weakness, refusing to admit how much the situation had changed them. And while Maya rebuilt herself piece by piece, through therapy, work, and the quiet support of Mrs. Sanders, she couldn't ignore the emotional weight pressing on her. The betrayal, the lies, the broken bonds. They were all there, waiting, like sparks in a dry forest, ready to ignite when the right moment came. Maya knew deep down that something would have to give. The tension could not last forever. But for now, she focused on herself, learning to stand on her own, learning that her life didn't have to revolve around the people who had hurt her. Slowly, painfully, she was discovering that strength and healing could come from within, even when the people who should have loved her most remained locked in their own pride and guilt. Maya's phone rang in the middle of her workday, the screen flashing with an unknown number. When she answered, the voice on the other end was urgent, almost panicked. "Maya, your father. He's been in a severe car accident. You need to get to the hospital immediately," the nurse said. Maya froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Her first instinct was to stay away, to protect herself from more pain. But something stronger, something she couldn't ignore, pushed her to move. She grabbed her keys, threw on her coat, and ran to her car, her mind spinning with fear, anger, and uncertainty all at once. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every red light, every turn seemed like an obstacle between her and the man who had caused her so much pain, yet who had once been the center of her life. She didn't know what to expect: anger, regret, relief, or heartbreak. All she knew was that she had to be there. When she arrived, the hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and busy nurses. She ran to the reception, her voice shaking. "My father, David Wallace, he's here. Can you tell me where he is?" A nurse led her down a long corridor to the ICU. There she saw him, pale and fragile, hooked up to machines. The man who had seemed invincible in her childhood now looked human, vulnerable, and in need of care. Her chest tightened as memories of their fights and his harsh words, "You're not my daughter," flashed through her mind. Then the nurse handed her a folded piece of paper. "We found this in his jacket pocket. He asked that it be given to you." Maya unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was familiar, unmistakably his. She read aloud, her voice breaking. "Even if you're not mine by blood, you are my daughter in every way that matters." Her knees nearly buckled. The letter carried everything he had been too proud to say, the words he had never spoken out loud. All the anger, the pain, the years of distance. They collided with the truth she was now holding in her hands. She could feel tears streaming down her face, a mixture of relief, sorrow, and something she hadn't felt in years: hope. David stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw her standing there, reading his words, he whispered, barely audible, "I was wrong, Maya. You've always been my daughter." The room seemed to hold its breath. Maya knelt beside him, taking his frail hand in hers, tears falling freely now. She didn't say anything more. Words felt unnecessary. Forgiveness didn't need to be spoken. It was in the squeeze of her hand, the tearful look in her eyes, the shared understanding between them. For the first time in years, the weight of anger and betrayal began to lift. She realized that blood didn't define their bond. Love did, and it could still be found, even after years of silence and pain. The hospital machines beeped steadily, a quiet background to the moment that would change everything. Maya stayed by his side, reading the letter over and over, letting each word sink in. The man who had pushed her away, who had said the cruelest thing she had ever heard, was now reaching out in the only way he could. And for the first time, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could start over. The room was filled with quiet, unspoken emotions, tears, relief, and the fragile beginnings of forgiveness. In that moment, Maya understood something she had always known deep down. Family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, about caring, about love that persists even when it's late, imperfect, and messy. She held his hand tighter and whispered softly, "I hear you, Dad. I've always been your daughter." And for the first time in a long time, she truly felt it. David survived the accident, but he was weak and needed help with even the simplest things. Maya stayed by his side for several days, cooking his meals, helping him sit up, and making sure he took his medicine. It wasn't easy. Seeing him so fragile brought back a flood of memories, both painful and tender, but she didn't turn away. Her mother, Evelyn, came to visit one afternoon. The air was thick with unspoken words as they faced each other. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face as she tried to explain years of mistakes, regrets, and lies. Maya listened, her heart aching, but she felt a strange calm inside. She realized forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing the past. It meant choosing to let go of the bitterness that had held her for so long. Eric, however, stayed away. He couldn't handle the truth or the shift in the family's dynamics. His absence was noticeable, but Maya didn't need him to validate her anymore. She had spent years living in his shadow, and now, she was stepping into her own light. Every day with David was a lesson. She saw his pride soften, his guilt and regret for the years of distance and harsh words, and she felt a quiet satisfaction in witnessing his transformation. But more importantly, she felt her own change. She no longer saw herself as the broken daughter, the one who needed validation from a father who never loved her correctly. She was strong, compassionate, and capable of creating her own life. Maya rebuilt her connection with her parents slowly, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Each small conversation, each shared laugh or quiet moment of understanding, became proof that love didn't depend on blood alone. It depended on showing up, even when it was difficult, even when it hurt. By the time David was able to leave the hospital, Maya felt a shift in herself. She wasn't just taking care of her father. She was taking care of herself, reclaiming her power, and learning that healing is a process that starts from within. The house was no longer a place of fear or rejection. It had become a space of cautious hope, of forgiveness and progress. Maya walked through it with her head held high, finally feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. She understood that being strong didn't mean being unfeeling. It meant facing pain, confronting it, and choosing to rise above it. Maya was no longer the daughter who trembled at her father's anger. She was a woman who had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and uncertainty, and had emerged whole. For the first time, she felt the quiet power of her own resilience, and she knew that nothing, not lies, not mistakes, not absence, could take that away from her. Months later, Maya visited her father's home again. The air felt lighter this time. The sharp tension that had always filled the rooms was gone. She walked slowly through the house, noticing small changes. The way sunlight fell on the wooden floor, the faint smell of fresh flowers, and the quiet calm that seemed to have replaced years of cold distance. On the living room table, a framed photo of her and David caught her eye. She hadn't known he had kept it. It was a simple picture, just the two of them, smiling, a moment of happiness frozen in time. Next to it, she placed the letter he had written, the one that had changed everything, and ran her fingers over the paper gently. "You were wrong, Dad," she whispered softly, her voice carrying a mix of love and strength. "I never stopped being your daughter." She stood there for a few moments, letting the silence sink in. No words were needed to fill the space. The past wasn't erased. She still remembered the pain, the rejection, and the years of confusion, but it no longer controlled her. She felt a sense of closure, a quiet peace that came from knowing she had faced everything, forgave what could be forgiven, and let go of what she couldn't change. As she stepped outside, the cool breeze touched her face. She took a deep breath and smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because she had finally found peace within herself. The hurt still existed, but it no longer had power over her. She had reclaimed her life, her heart, and her sense of self. Maya walked away from the house, leaving behind old pain and carrying forward hope, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of emotional rebirth. She knew life wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time, she felt ready for whatever came next. Hey friends, thanks a lot for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.